Hello, everybody. Welcome to the conversation of our generation, where we are solving the problems of today with the wisdom of the past. My name is Nick Jamel, the creator and the host of the podcast here. And today I want to talk about The Lord of the Rings, the first book, The Fellowship of the Ring. And if I sound a little funky or if I go into a coughing fit, I do have a bit of a cold. I do not have any reason to suspect that it is COVID, so do not fret. Even if I did have COVID, probably wouldn't be that big of a deal for someone my age, but I definitely feel like I sound weird. It might just be because my ears are even stuffed up, but I just get this kind of head cold every time this year, it seems like. Or this year every time. So, wow, I can't even talk. See, I'm not even thinking straight. This time every year. That's the phrase that I was trying to say. Um, and so, if I sound weird, please bear with me. But today I want to talk about the Fellowship of the Ring because I think we are in a place where each of us has had something similar thrust upon them, this sort of burden that in the book, Gandalf says something along the lines of, we don't ask for these hard times, but when they come, you have to deal with it. That is not a direct quote, but that's basically what he says to Frodo when it's like, why am I the one who has to bear this burden? It's because you're the one who's there when the burden arises. And I think that as a culture, as a society, we have a lot of burdens that we have to face. And so I think this book, and I'm going to go through each of these. I don't know if it'll be all three, like the next 3 weeks we'll be doing it. I haven't planned that far ahead, but I do want to talk about each of these books and review them because I think that they are a great story that most of you have probably read. But for those of you who haven't, I will let you know when spoilers are coming. So don't worry if I do talk about aspects of this book that are important to the storyline. But I think that this is definitely just an important story to take a look at and to know because it's a great, it's just a great story, A. And B, I think it is a very valuable lesson in what it takes to push back against evil. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. Before I do, I want to remind you to subscribe wherever you're listening to this on the podcast. Leave a good rating and review. That really helps me out. Follow me on Twitter and Facebook at Conabargen on Twitter and pretty much most places. Find me on YouTube, Conversation of Our Generation. Just search that. You'll find the YouTube channel. Or go to conversationofourgeneration.com to find out more about what I have going on. And I'm going to be doing some good interviews coming up. I'm trying to set some of those up. I'm not sure if I'll have one ready for next Tuesday, but so it might just be me on Tuesday when you're listening to this, but should have some good ones in the works coming up. So that'll be really exciting. I found a new way to get more of those scheduled and reach out to more people. So that's exciting for me. And I also want to just remind you about my book as well, Property Rights in the Digital Age. You can find that on Amazon. And if you buy that, that helps me out, supports what I'm doing, and is really appreciated. So thank you for all those who have bought it and are reading it. That I appreciate that, and I'm always open to hearing your thoughts on it. So let me know. And so the reason I want to talk about The Hobbit, like I said, is I think we're at a time where there is sort of this similar feeling as what you have at the beginning of The Hobbit. And so to set the stage, this starts with a birthday party being planned for Bilbo Baggins, and his nephew Frodo is helping out. And what you get a sense of is there's something going on that this little area where the hobbits live, the Shire, is sort of isolated from. And J.R. Tolkien tells you a little bit about who the hobbits are. So read the book because they're very interesting, funny people. But it's they're sort of isolated from the world around them, and this leads them a little bit ignorant of the different things that are going on outside of the Shire. And what they don't realize is all these strange travelers that they see coming through the Shire are people who are fleeing away from some danger that's happening and arising out in the east. And so at some point, Bilbo decides it's time for him to get away, and he disappears after his birthday party and goes off and takes one last trek east. He's the focus of the Hobbit. Bilbo is, and so he leaves his inheritance to Frodo, and a little bit of time goes by, and it comes to pass that more and more of these people are coming by. There's more and more of a just uneasiness and a weird feeling about what's going on. And so eventually, Gandalf, the wizard that we all know and love, comes and says, Frodo, you need to go to, we need to get out of here. You need to go to Rivendell. We need to figure out what to do with this ring because I found out some very interesting bad things about it, and there are bad people in action. And so Frodo picks up and takes off. And I think that this is, I mean, it's your typical hero's journey, but what I love about this is his reluctance, his idea that, I can't be the one to do this. I'm not able to do this. I've never left the Shire, really. I'm but he also had this calling a little bit in his example of Bilbo, who just not that long, well, not that long, you know, who before him took the same call when Gandalf suddenly stopped by with like 12 dwarves and brought him out to the Lonely Mountain. The idea here that there's this insulated, kind of ignorant of the workings of the world and the workings of evil, really, that are happening around them because they do have the good thing about the hobbits that allow them to be so great in these stories and to kind of ignore the rest of the world is they're so contented with their lives. And it's not until they're under siege that they would really take action. And I think that a lot of us are like that. I think a lot of us are not going to push back until it's like, how am I going to feed my family? That's the line that we draw in the sand. And I think we have to recognize that there is a time before that you shouldn't wait until you're backed into a corner to fight. You need to be a little bit prudent and fight when it's appropriate and fight when it's called for. And luckily, in the case of Frodo and Bilbo, there's people who come by and tell them, hey, it's time to get up and go and to push back. And they answer that call. And eventually, so that's the very beginning of the book, not spoiling anything. And if you haven't read it, maybe stop the podcast, go buy it through the link in the show notes and read it for yourself. Or buy the whole set. I'll probably have that in here too. And buy the set and just read them because these are great books and you should. But then he goes on this winding journey and everything's so new to him, and everything for Frodo and his companions on the journey is novel and mysterious, and each time they're in a bind, you see them get out of it some other way, and there's people who come along and help them, and it's a very similar journey to what we have to do if we want to push back against this overbearing culture. There are people you see like Rod Dreher with the Benedict option and all of these people saying, get away from society, pull back out of society. And there are people who are doing that. And there are people who are watching those people go by and leave society. But I think that we have to say, no, I'm not going to let the whole world and our whole society be conquered by anti religious secularism, all of these nihilism, materialism, all of these bad ideologies. I don't want to see my entire world be succumb to these terrible ideologies. I want to pick up, my staff and go on the journey and find a way to push back. And the beautiful thing about the first book is Frodo is obviously just bumbling through everything. All of the people he's with are just figuring it out. They don't know what the hell they're doing at all. And it makes you feel a little better because they find a way to get through it and to, make it to the end of the first book where they are on their journey. They've covered a lot of ground, but they've really, and they've had some trials and tribulations, losses along the way. I don't think I'm going to give away any spoilers, but at the end of the book, the end of the first book, there's still much of the journey left to go. Obviously, it's a 3-part series, so hence there's a little bit of ways to go. But what I love about the first one is as they're going through the Shire, there's this sense of each step along the way, they get more and more outside of the world they understand to more and more foreign types of things, from talking trees and men who, very interesting, weird, magical men, to elves, to all sorts of different things that go awry. I mean, accidentally disappearing in front of a group of people. All sorts of silly things happen, bad things that throw their journey off track. And I think it's reassuring to see, as you go through the books, that he continues to mature. That's what I see in the first book so much, is Frodo as a character in a very short amount of time matures and grows up a lot. He's kind of, he's older because he's like 50, but hobbits live a lot longer. So it's really like he's in his coming of age is what it is. Or I guess maybe not coming of age. Like it's kind of like he's in his mid 30s sort of thing. Like he's come of age and he's been an adult for a while, and now, he really hasn't made his mark on the world, and then he goes on this journey and he takes up his burden and he goes. And through that process, through the trials and tribulations, he learns a lot. And I think that that's what each of us can learn from him, is we might be very naive right now, but we can definitely go out there and start to take part in the fight and to see what our role is in pushing back against this culture that is overbearing, that is antithetical to so much of what personally I believe. And I'm sure that many of you listening as well can find things in our culture that are what you would consider despicable. And so how do we go about pushing back against that? I think each of us has to say, I'm going to go on this journey. I'm going to fall and stumble and make mistakes, but I'm going to try it. And that's what I mean, just the entire time I'm reading the first book, I'm just relating to Frodo so much about kind of becoming, I'm 25 years old, looking at sort of solidifying my place in the world and understanding what my role in the world is. And you see a lot of that in him, and just you have to listen to the people who know more than you and take their advice to heart and know who to figure out and learn who to trust and who not to trust, and learn how to do that properly, because you're going to trust the wrong people sometimes. Sometimes you're forced into a corner and you have to trust somebody and hope that it works out. And I really like this book because it just is relatable to, I think a child can relate to this coming of age, but I think a young man can as well. And so that's why I think we ought to read it and check it out. So definitely buy it through the links that I have in my show notes. Let me know what you think about these book reviews, if these are helpful. If there's books that I should be checking out, definitely let me know that as well. Subscribe to the podcast YouTube channel, share it with a friend. If you've been trying to nudge them into reading some Tolkien, let them know, because I read The Hobbit as a kid. I went through the Lord of the Rings series recently, and I'm very passionate about where this is right about how great these stories are at the moment, because I was just on fire after it. I was just ready to take on the world, and I think it's a very inspiring story, and one that we need to hear right now as a lot of things are looming over us. So definitely check out conversationfourgeneration.com, subscribe, follow me on Twitter, share this with a friend, all of those things. And thank you for listening to this episode of The Conversation of Our Generation. Let's get the dialogue going. I'll talk to you next time.